Hey everyone, if you've ever felt this massive, gaping chasm between your ideal self and who you actually are right now, or if you're the kind of person who constantly fixates on what you haven't done instead of what you have, well, you're in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we're going on a really fascinating deep dive into the psychological mechanics behind self-doubt, perfectionism, and how we can actually effectively rebuild our self-esteem. We're going to unpack the source material to understand exactly why our minds play these tricks on us, and more importantly, how we can break free from the cycle. So let's get right into it.
So picture this. You've just had one of those days. You know the ones. Highly productive. You ran errands all morning, absolutely crushed your hardest tasks at work, managed the house like a pro. But then, right at the very end of the day, you made one tiny mistake. Maybe you sent an email to your boss and realized hours later you attached the wrong file. Or maybe you just had a slightly awkward goodbye with a neighbor. And suddenly, you're laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and that one little stumble is literally the only thing you can think about. It feels like the entire day was a total wash. Why does our brain literally wipe the hard drive of all that good stuff and just fixate on that single negative moment? Okay, let's dive into this because this source material points out something incredibly relieving here. It is not a personal flaw. It's not some special weakness that only you struggle with. Focusing on what didn't go well is actually a totally natural, common movement of the human mind. We have this hardwired psychological tendency to be strongly pulled toward our most recent stumble, completely ignoring the mountain of positive actions we took throughout the day. And recognizing this is absolutely crucial because, if you let this natural tendency run unchecked, you stop feeling any sense of growth. Instead, you just feel this pervasive, heavy sense of lacking.
And that brings us to a really critical concept from our research: self-denial. It's defined as the habit of continuously gathering materials just to blame yourself. Every single time you replay that one email mistake or that awkward little interaction, you're essentially collecting evidence against your own worth. And doing this quietly, day in and day out, it steadily chips away at your self-esteem. It creates this painful, totally distorted gap between your ideal self and reality, making you blind to the dozens of things you actually pulled off. Honestly, it's an exhausting way to live.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how we internally keep score, because this is where the real shift happens. Most of us unconsciously use the subtraction method. Imagine waking up and assuming you start at a perfect 100 points, and every time you make a mistake, you deduct points. Late to a meeting, boom, -10. Stumbled over your words, -5. With this method, no matter how hard you try, you're only ever going to feel the sting of lost points by bedtime. But contrast that with the addition method. Here, you start at 0, you gain points for just waking up, for putting in effort at your job, for successfully talking to someone. With this mindset, your daily efforts are actually rewarded. Think about how liberating that is. Your impression of the exact same day flips completely just by changing how you keep score.
I absolutely love this quote from the text. It says, changing the yardstick is not about changing your personality, but simply choosing a new way of seeing. If you're sitting there right now thinking, well, I'm just a pessimistic person, I can't change, this insight proves that's simply not true. You do not need a massive personality overhaul to fix this. You don't have to spend years fundamentally changing who you are. You're simply making a gentle, conscious adjustment in how you evaluate your daily life. You're just choosing to pick up a different yardstick. But here's the thing, this self-evaluation doesn't just neatly stop at our personal achievements at work or at home. Let's talk about the ripple effect. Because this exact same self-negation, this intense subtraction mindset, silently sabotages our love lives and our ability to connect with other people. When we're constantly judging ourselves as lacking, that deep insecurity bleeds directly into how we view ourselves as partners. And a lot of times, it stops relationships before they even have a chance to get off the ground.
So how does this actually manifest? Well, we see some really specific relationship anxieties. First up, there's a deep fear of making the other person unhappy. Because of past trauma or memories of disappointing someone, we sometimes carry this heavy, awful belief that getting close to us is going to ruin their life. And that fear leads right into the next anxiety, where we start replaying potential embarrassing failures in advance, before a date even happens. Our mind rushes ahead, imagines us failing, and hits the brakes. Then we set these impossibly high hurdles for romance. Like we act totally natural around our friends, but suddenly demand absolute perfection from ourselves the second romantic feelings are involved. And finally, the whole shebang culminates in this belief that we need full, 100% confidence in our lives before we're somehow qualified to date.
But our source material completely dismantles that idea. It tells us confidence is not a prerequisite, it grows through connection. Seriously, if you're waiting around for some perfectly confident, flawless version of yourself to magically appear before you allow yourself to date or connect, you're just delaying action. You're missing out. The text emphasizes that waiting for the perfect conditions might feel like you're just being careful or sincere,
but it's really just a fancy excuse to procrastinate. Relationships are literally the soil where confidence grows.
Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to daydream about a happy future? Maybe a wildly successful career or a super loving relationship, and suddenly you feel your mind hit a brick wall, like a sudden, screeching break? Our research highlights this fascinating subconscious resistance. Sometimes, because of past disappointments, we actually feel a deep guilt or just profound terror about hoping for happiness. We unconsciously cut off our own imagination because hoping just feels dangerous. We want to protect ourselves from being hurt again, so we just stop visualizing the good things altogether.
And when that break engages, we almost always fall back into thinking we're entirely deficient. But here is the reality check. The feeling of lacking everything is an emotion. It is not a factual reality. When we fail to get a perfect score in one specific area of our lives, our distorted thinking tricks us into grading our entire existence as a total failure. The source notes that if you actually sat down and wrote out the things you feel you lack, you'd realize it's just vague anxiety. It's not based on hard numbers or facts. It's just a feeling. And feelings aren't always facts.
So the crucial point is, how do we actively counteract this? Well, the source provides some highly actionable, really compassionate steps to rebuild that self-esteem. Step 1 starts super simply. Write down one thing you maintain today. Even if it feels totally trivial, recording it builds tangible, undeniable evidence of your capability. Next, we've got to stop waiting for perfection. Actually, scratch that. We have to completely destroy those impossibly strict standards so we can actually appreciate the effort we put in. And finally, step 3. Give yourself permission to connect exactly as you are right now. You do not need to be a finished product to be worthy of connection. Giving yourself that permission is so incredibly vital because relationships are built by imperfect people interacting and growing. They are not built by two perfect people meeting up. When you demand perfection from yourself, you're inevitably going to end up demanding it from your partner too. And that kind of strictness, it totally suffocates a relationship. It makes everything rigid and exhausting. By allowing yourself to be imperfect, you're actually allowing the relationship to breathe, adapt, and grow naturally.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to carry with you. We've seen that the distance between who we are and who we want to be is something literally everyone experiences. Rushing to close that gap, it just causes anxiety. Instead, we need to take small, self-compassionate steps. So I'm going to challenge you with this. If perfection isn't required to be worthy of love and success, what is one small thing you can give yourself credit for today? Just imagine how your life might change if you started using that addition method tomorrow morning. Thanks so much for exploring this topic with me.